you're always better off writing something than not writing something. And you don't always have to finish something. But if you don't put something down on the page, you got nothing.
Welcome to the Funny in Failure podcast, a podcast that celebrates failure and shines the light on the emotional side of comedy, with yours truly, Michael Kahan.
What can I say about today's guest? Gary is wise, kind, and generous. He has years of experience and knowledge in the entertainment industry, as you'll soon hear. He has this gentle, soft, and empowering energy about him, which I love. His forward-moving approach is inspirational. Plus, I love his ability to break down things into bite-sized chunks. You can see why he's been in the industry for so long, so let's get into it and officially introduce Gary to the podcast. Gary Goldstein writes for TV, film, and the stage, and he's now also a novelist. He has written more than 15 produced telefilms, including the comedies The Wish List, Hitched for the Holidays, This Magic Moment, and My Boyfriend's Dogs, as well as the first two movies in the Flower Shop mystery series, starring Brooke Shields. Gary's latest TV movie, Lights, Camera, Christmas, will premiere on Hallmark Channel in late 2022. His feature film, Politics of Love, a romantic comedy set during the 2008 US presidential elections, was released in theaters in 2011. He also wrote the feature romantic comedy, If You Only Knew. Gary's feature adaptation of the novel, Mr. 365, premiered on the streaming service Passion Flix in 2018 and is also available on Amazon Prime. Gary's also sold or optioned a number of original screenplays, has a string of episodic TV credits, and has sold half-hour comedy pilots to both NBC and Warner Bros. He was represented on the Los Angeles stage, most recently with the world premiere of his acclaimed Three Sisters dramedy, April, May and June, produced as part of its subscription season by Theatre 40 of Beverly Hills. The play won 5 Broadway World Award nominations, including Best Local Production. Gary's also been a regular contributing film reviewer and arts feature writer for the Los Angeles Times since 2007. He's also a talented author where his first novel, the romantic comedy The Last Birthday, was published in August 2021. It won a 2022 IBPA Benjamin Franklin Award for Excellence in Fiction. His second novel, the family drama The Mother I Never Had, is now out, and if you'd like to buy it, you can check it out in the episode notes or online wherever you get your books. So as you can imagine, we dive deep and we cover a lot, such as sharing ideas, collaboration, letting go, the art of writing across mediums, the ego, procrastination, being the holiday season writer guru, when shows don't get made, celebrating the wins, being a film critic, happiness, and his new book, plus more. Before we get into this chat, in case you aren't aware, the videos are now available on YouTube under Michael Kahan. That's Kahan with a K, unless you're listening to it already. I find it adds a new element and dynamic to these chats. I'll still be posting snippets of these chats on Instagram under Funny in Failure, so check them out if you want to stay in the loop for upcoming episodes, or you want to ask a guest a question. I'd also love it if you would share the podcast or share your takeaways from the chat. It really motivates me, helps the podcast grow, and ensures I can lock in amazing guests like this one. And just as a final reminder, the podcast comes out every Monday at 5 p.m. Australian Eastern Standard Time, with the video to follow the following day. Anyway, sit back, relax, and enjoy today's epic episode. But this could be a funny way to start our chat. I know that you've done all the writing, so you're a journalist, a screenwriter, a playwright, now an author. When you see like poorly worded sentences or typos, does that drive you crazy?
Drives me crazy. It just does. I've learned so much about between in screenwriting definitely, but particularly with journalism and now writing novels. I've learned so much about grammar and punctuation and spelling, things that I never even knew. And it's like I put my time in, and there's no. And it's funny. The thing is, in books too, I read, I'll read like books by big authors, big publishers, and I'm amazed at how many typos there are. And I'm like, this is just not
Really?
right. People are spending good money on your book. There should not be typos. And with novels, I have to say, in these two novels, between myself and my publisher, I mean, and their editors and everybody, we've all read these books like 20 times. And it's like, and even then, the 20th time, you can still find that mistake. I can't believe I wrote that. It just takes a lot of eyes, it really does. So yeah, I'm a stickler, to do that. And there's not much excuse, but it's not. It doesn't mean that something's not well written if there are typos in it or something. Everybody's got their strengths. I happen to have pretty good eye for catching things, but I definitely miss my share of stuff. But yeah, and when I wrote, and my books always started off longer than they ended up after the editing. And in the end, I was glad they were shorter because I had to read them so many times that I was so glad. Yeah, I didn't have to. Yeah, those extra 25 pages we lost. Like,
Oh,
great,
wow.
you know. Yeah, and on my first book, on the last birthday party, we started off at 98,000 words and we ended up at 84,000 words, which was, and they did such a great job editing it, and there was nothing that they wanted to change or recommended changing that I disagreed with. There was one part of a scene that I loved, and they recommended cutting it because they felt it just sort of stopped the action. And I was like, no, 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 I love this scene. And they were like, okay. And then I reread it and reread it, and I was like, you know what, they're right. I don't need this scene,
That's pretty big of
So
you.
yeah. Well, listen, there are a lot of people who know a lot more than I do, and I want to defer to them. And with my publisher, that it's been such a great working relationship that I so totally trust what they think, and vice versa. That I really, I really listen to it. I really believe in good collaboration. And if you're going to be a writer and you're going to have enough experiences, you're going to be collaborating with a lot of people. And you hope for good collaboration. Most of my collaborations have been very positive. Occasionally, you get those people who really they're just not as skillful. And you try to work your way around it, and you make people happy, and try to make yourself happy and other people happy at the same time. It's a bit of a juggling act, but yeah, I do cringe when I see mistakes.
I've
Like
written
that.
down
Yeah,
50 questions. I know. Go
yeah,
on, go on.
yeah. That's it. No, I just yeah, I'm don't like those mistakes.
I've got 1,000 questions that you said a few words which is very interesting to me as a writer, is that you talked about collaboration, you talked about trust, you talked about
Yeah.
cutting. These are the most terrifying words as a screenwriter, or especially, or a writer in general.
Right.
Please tell me how you got to that, because I know that when I first started out, and I am just starting out, that if someone said, we don't like this scene, but you feel like you want it, it's very hard to let go. But you
Right.
actually put your ego to the side and read it a few times and go, you know what, they're right.
Yeah, I've learned to do that, and I have to say, my first experience professionally in this kind of thing was my very first writing job, screenwriting job, was a long, long time ago. I wrote an episode of a TV series called Saved by the Bell, the
Yep.
original Saved by the Bell, and I had pitched many ideas to them. They picked one. I wrote the script. I worked with them and the staff, rewriting the script and doing things. Then they, on their own, took it away and did their thing. And I went to the taping of the show. And first of all, I mean, it was the first thing that I had written that was actually being shot, so that was
Yes,
exciting.
very exciting.
And I listened to how the script had changed, and I thought, I have to say, I really felt like they kept a lot of my good lines and all that, but they changed a lot. And I thought it was a really good show. I really enjoyed it. And after the show was over, I met all the cast members, and a few of them came up to me and said, "Oh God, thanks for writing that line, blah, blah, blah." And it was so much fun to play. And it's like, I didn't write that, but I didn't say anything. No, thank you. And I realized it doesn't really matter. I mean,
Yep.
my name's on it. Everybody's just trying to do the best they can. And that's what, running a show is about, or what staff writers are there for. I was just a freelancer at that point. And I learned a lot. That was such a positive, fun experience that it tempered the fact that, oh, my jokes didn't get in, all my jokes didn't get in, or something. And then I took that, and honestly, I have to say, you have to realize, as a writer, you don't know everything. And you also often don't know a lot of things, but you know what you think you want to do. You know what you want your story to be. You think you want your story to be. Nobody sets out to write something that doesn't work or isn't skillful. But it takes a lot. It takes a village. It takes a lot of people to get things to where they are. And my work has improved dramatically for the most part. There are a couple of experiences that will go without discussion, but by and large, I'd say 90% of the work that I've done has been improved by collaboration, and I mean that often. Somebody will just recommend something. I'll get notes, and I'll do the rewriting. Much of it is me rewriting it, but taking notes and taking input and changing scenes and going with the cuts and things like that. And it's totally improved it. So I'm good about that. There is the balance though of finding the way to, if you really disagree with something and you really feel like the executive or the producer or network or whoever it is kind of missing the mark. You're all going for the same thing, but how you get there could be very different. And so there are times where I've had to be politic about it and just say, look, I get what you're going for. I'm not sure that's really the right way to go. Let me suggest this. And most of the time you're in that compromise. They see the compromise and they get it. And if people are good executives, we put our egos aside and we're like, yeah, that's great. But what often happens is you have one thing on the page, they recommend something else, you recommend something else, they hit it with this and you have it, and then ultimately you end up with something that's really, really honed. And I'm all for that. I've written a lot of stage plays and had a number of plays produced. And as a playwright, you end up being there every step of the way. They don't change to the without asking you. I mean, it's just how it works, and it's very very group effort, very collaborative, but very deferent to the playwright. And because of that, I'm so like, oh, well, what do you think? Can you say that? As an actor, does that make sense to you? Like, I want it to be really good. I want to hear what they have to say, because ultimately, if a lot of times in theater, actors will, they'll have, they'll. I guess it happens in movies and TV too, but because theater is live, you can judge the reaction. But it's sort of like they may not really know what you're going for in a line, but they just speak the line, And sometimes it's like, you don't really get that joke, do you? Well, not really. Could you explain it? And I explain, it's like, oh, that's what it is. And then they put their great spin on it, and it totally works. So, I've had experiences with plays where, comedies especially, where I've written mostly comedies, where, they just try something one night. They put an accent on a different syllable, or they maybe change a word, or they just add a word, or do something that hits them at that moment, and it brings down the house. And I'm like, that's great. I don't care. I don't care if that wasn't my idea. Everybody's having a great time, and it just makes the whole play better. So, you have enough experiences, you figure out how to ultimately make it work to be okay yourself, make other people happy with the work that they're doing, but then also create the best product you can. It's all about creating the best product. And if I'm not directing something, I have to defer to the director, and that's what their job is. And they need to put their own stamp on something. They're not there just to be a traffic cop generally. They're there to put their own stamp on it. And why not? That's what you have a director for. I haven't directed a lot of things that I've written. I've directed several things, but I've really enjoyed good directors, who brought so much to it. So it's a process. You learn. I mean, I've talked to new writers a lot about this and how you navigate notes and your own feelings and your own ego and all of that. And it takes a lot of experience, I think, to get to a point of being comfortable with it.
But it sounds like you've just got it from the get-go. And I've heard so many writers and even actors and everyone else who there's always that ego. There's ego in everything. It doesn't matter if you're a writer or you're not a writer, where we think our way is the best way or they're not quite getting it. And it can be very hard to get to the next step and then the next step. And you're kind of talking about a sandwich where you hear their feedback, they hear your feedback, and you work together. Through my experience, especially at the start, it's very hard to get there or allow ourselves to get there. So I'm just wondering, what are your secrets? Did you just know that if you wanted to be doing this for a long time, you had to kind of work with them, or was there through like pain, or what's kind of been the relationship there?
Probably a combination of things. I mean, I'm a pretty we all have egos, but I'm a pretty, even keeled person. And I've been fortunate to work with a lot of good people, in my career. Not everybody's great. Like I said, I've definitely had my share of, bad situations and things that, should have been much better. But by and large, I've been treated well as a writer. You don't get treated all that well by the business all the time. Writers are relatively interchangeable unless you're like a very big writer. But by and large, I've had good experiences, and I've written, maybe, I don't know, 15, 16 produced television movies, a couple of features, many stage plays. I've met a lot of people and worked with a lot of people, and you find your way to do it. Everybody's different. The dynamics are different between everybody, but you have to know as a writer when to push forward and when to pull back, when to hand over, create your baby, and then when to hand it over and it be okay. And you can't hold on to things too tightly. And I really say, and I do, and I really mean this, it took me to having a few movies made to get to this point, which is, if I can get 80% of my script on the screen, or I'm happy with 80% of what's on the screen, that's pretty good. And also, you as a writer, you know every line that's changed, you know everything that's not quite working. The average viewer does not get that. They don't know it. I mean, when I've done plays, I've been sitting in the audience, and I'll have actors, they'll mess up lines, or a scene, a sentence will be dropped or something like that, and like I'm sitting there, rolling my eyes, and like, people at the end of the play, oh, it was great, we loved it, and like, nobody gets it. They don't know what and they shouldn't. It's great, and you realize, you just can't be neurotic about this stuff all the time. So you have to just, you have to really kind of, it's a mindset. But once you get that mindset and you're comfortable with it, you go with it. But yeah, I learned, listen, it's a collaborative business. And if I walked into, if every time I didn't agree with a note, or I didn't want something changed, I said, no, I'm not going to do that. You know what? They go do it anyway. For the most part, if I don't change something, they'll bring on another writer, or the director will do it, or whatever. And what's the point? What are you accomplishing? You want to get it, you want to work again, you want to work with good people. I mean, I've been fortunate to work with many people who are good, several times, so that's the whole point. You want your repeat business. And writing is about, there's the physical part of writing, and then there's the practical part of writing and making movies or plays or TV shows. And people want to work with people that are good to work with. Nobody's asking you to roll over, and play dead, but people like people who are open to ideas, and it's not their way or the highway, and it's no way to work. It really isn't. And when you're big and you can get anything you want, and everybody listens to you, there's very small, number of writers like that. Great. But even then, people they're still taking notes. They're still trying to make a network happy. Trying to make the actors, make it work for the actors. So, it's a process. It's definitely a process. But yeah, I just think every person will handle it differently. And ultimately, you have to think about what's best, like I said before, ultimately what's best for the project. What's going to make this the best movie? Because you know what, in the end, your name is going to be on it, one way or the other, even if you end up sharing credit or whatever, by and large, your name ends up on these things. And hey, you want it to be good, and if somebody has a better idea, I want to hear it. So
you have the most impressive mindset or looking on the writing that I've ever heard. And I don't say that lightly because look, you mentioned so many points, and I'm just going to go through a few of them. Like, for example, Saved by the Bell. You've written this script, which is really exciting. It's your first one. You get to do a show like that. And then, they haven't used all of your lines, but you've still created the platform for them to expand on what you've done. So it is a team effort in that regard, even if you're not involved in the later stages. And that's pretty awesome that you can look back and say, you know what, maybe they did a better job, or it still worked, or you talked about that 80%.
Right.
Which I think.
Well, on that Saved by the Bell, the funny thing was, when I sat down in the audience to watch the taping, they had their all their sets. It was a multi-camera thing, and they had all their sets, but there was one set that was brand new, because I had come up with this idea. It was set in the high school radio station. So there was one set that they created just for the script, which was the radio station. I was looking at that saying, wow, that's so cool. They created a set because I came up. If I didn't come up with that particular idea, they wouldn't have had that set. It might have been another set, but it wouldn't have been that. And that was really a thrill, and I kind of realized again, how much I was able to accomplish with that. And even if everything wasn't from the script there, this was a big deal, and it was a long, that was a very early impression. But I think about that a lot, and I always try to bring that into the process, that what you contribute, what's important that you contribute, what other people contribute, and again, making the best product you can.
I absolutely love this because, I said this before, but I'm going to reiterate it again. Screenwriting or anything, when you've created something, it's your baby. We hold on tight. We don't
Right.
want anyone to necessarily change it. But what I'm hearing from you is that you are very open if it's for the highest good of your project. And it sounds like the vast majority of time, everyone's come together to actually make it better. And you kind of put your ego to the side for the most part. Very rare. That's how I want to do it in this industry. You don't hear that too often in all industries, regardless of writing as
Yeah.
well.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that's a big part of survival. A lot of writing is survive, how you survive it emotionally. And like I said, I've been doing this a long time. I've been through a lot. I've had many, many ups and downs. And I'm talking to you today on a period of my career, which has for a long time has been definitely not I wouldn't say on the upswing. It's been very positive these last many years, but I just struck a good balance in my life, and with all of it, and as a result, also what happens the more you do it, I think the more confident you can be in the choices you make, how you approach people, just being yourself. I just think it's very hard in any business to not be able to be yourself in a moment and to have to sort of become somebody you're not. And I think one of the most gratifying things is to like keep your soul, keep who you are,
Mhm.
be honest, but also be somebody that people want to work with. And it is kind of a balance. But I am talking to you from having had many, many experiences. And had we had this conversation many years ago, it would sound a little bit different.
You you have an amazing self-reflection and you've got what sounds like very strong positive self-talk. I know that I think you did psychotherapy previously. I don't know if you're still doing it. Has that been one of the things to help you? Because to hear your language and to hear how there's no ego, it's just like beautiful and it's all about the team and it's collaboration. My favorite words. Can you tell me about that? How did you get to the Gary we're seeing now in terms of the self-talk?
Well, I'm a big believer in psychotherapy. I've written movies about
Mm,
lots of number of movies about therapists, comedies about therapists and therapy, and I think it's incredibly valuable. I think everybody should do it at one point in their life
yeah,
as a way to
everyone needs
reflect.
therapy. Yeah.
Um, but I think what therapy did for me, I didn't go to therapy to begin with. I went many, many years ago, and I went for a significant stretch of time. But it was not about work as much as about my life. But then eventually the two came together because how you handle your personality and how you handle your life, it bleeds into your work and vice versa. So I had a great therapist, and she was really at a kind of a pivotal point in my life, and it was in the early part of my career. I had made this career change, earlier in my work life, and it was kind of a rupture in my career, but a good rupture. But it was really literally, it was like going from being a plumber to a doctor. I mean, it was, or a doctor to a lawyer, or whatever. It was very, very different. And so she helped me navigate that. But a lot of it was just finding the ways to feel confident and not, in the beginning of a writing career, especially, you want the work and you want to, you have to get a toehold. And I remember I was pitching a lot of TV shows back then, and that was at a period of time where all these there was just we're just dealing with network TV shows. There was no streaming. There weren't the cable shows that there are now. By and large, there were network shows, and you were dealing with 20 some odd episodes of every show every season. So the shows would have to bring on a couple of freelance writers to do a few episodes. So there was a lot of opportunity, and there were lots of shows. So I pitched on many, many shows. But it was nerve-wracking in the beginning because I wanted the work. You get a little of that imposter syndrome. I just sort of I didn't fall into being a screenwriter, but I definitely, it was not what I started off doing. So I felt I was in the middle of my learning curve as I was pitching for work. And it was nerve-wracking, but in therapy, we talked a lot about what are the things that are making me nervous or anxious or uncomfortable, or you know, why am I not feeling better about myself? All that kind of stuff. And it was very helpful, and ultimately it gave me a much more even keel to approaching meetings and things like that. And of course, now when I go into meetings, it's very different, partly because I mean you're always selling, you're always trying to, make it work. You're always trying to impress somebody about, that the story is great and we should do it and you're enthusiastic and certainly you want the job. But one thing I've said to people, it's like, most of the pitches you have, most of the meetings you have are never going to amount to anything. So why stress? Go in, drink some nice water, have a nice time, make people laugh, or talk about things other than your idea as well, and just enjoy the meeting so that when you walk out of there, even if it doesn't sell, you've had a good time, or you feel good about yourself, or you don't feel like so stressed. And the pitch meetings can be very stressful,
Yeah.
based on how much you put into them. But if you kind of go in with the attitude of like, listen, I love this idea, I think you'd make a great movie or TV show or whatever, but there are a million good ideas out there. So the chances of them picking mine, are a little on the remote side, just because it's a roulette wheel that's always spinning and you're trying to get your ball to, drop into it. But that was also something I had to realize, that, every meeting was not make or break for my life, and that was really important, and to just, walk out of that room just feeling okay, feeling good. You know what? That was good. I liked it. I had met nice people. It was fine. Most pitches, they don't pan out. Which isn't to say you shouldn't put 110% into them, and you should be incredibly well prepared and be incredibly enthusiastic and really know your business. But I think it's like you have to manage your expectations.
Oh, okay. I've got another 100 points. I think that's amazing. And we hear a lot of examples with actors because, the average actor might go and audition 100 times, which to me is like pitching a show in a sense. You're
Right.
going out there to
Right.
show that you're the right person. And, the odds are 1 in 100, but you have to have the mindset as you're saying that you still want to go and get it. But if you're going to be super stressed every single time, then that's going to be a very hard way to live. That's easier said than done, though. But we've heard so many examples where people come in, they're prepared, they're enthusiastic, and even though they didn't get the role there, it has led to other opportunities down the line, purely because of the mindset that you're talking about.
Right, right. But I think, a lot of times, and also this happens in movies and all that. And oh, excuse me, missed that chair. Anecdotally, you hear a lot. Oh yeah, well, I sold the pitch in the room. Uh, you know, that does not happen a lot, and generally, it takes a long time for somebody to turn something down, and they'll run it up and down the flagpole. It takes a while. I mean, I had one experience where I did sell something in the room where the executive was like high enough where they could, I've had probably a few experiences, but
Nice.
really one that was earlier on in my career and was kind of a weird eye opener. But I happened to have been with an executive who was high enough on the food chain where they could make decisions or get something into development. And in the room, it was like, yeah, I like the third one. Let's do that. We'll make a deal.
Wow.
And that was like, wow, and then it was actually for a TV pilot that I wrote. And that was really cool. But invariably that doesn't happen. And I never, and even though that happened a long time ago, I never walked into another meeting since thinking, oh, that's going to happen again.
Yep.
That was my moment. I had that one moment. I sold it in the room. That was it. It's
You're
like winning the
happy, man.
lottery. It happens once in your life. And, I don't know, will it happen again? I don't know. I mean, honestly, I have to say with my TV movies and certainly with the relationships I've established with producers and networks and things after writing a lot of them, I will get more immediate feedback generally. But that takes a long time to happen. That takes a long time in your career, I think, to get to. But yeah, there are a lot of fallacies in the business. And I think one of the great pieces of advice somebody gave me, and I didn't think of advice as advice at the time.
Yeah.
I was like, you got to be kidding me. But I was pitching a TV show, a sitcom. And I knew the showrunners a little bit through like family friends or something. So that's how I got the pitch. I went in, pitched a bunch of ideas. They didn't buy any, but they were really nice. And they said to me, look, you're just starting out. This is your first year doing it. Figure that it'll take you 5 years to kind of start to have a career, to start to get your groove as a TV writer. I was like, forget it. I'm not doing this for I'm not going to do 5 years. This is ridiculous. Why will it take 5 years? And then ultimately at the 5 year mark, I was like, they were right. And it was a good lesson because it kind of as the time went on, and I realized, you know what, it's a lot of chipping away in the beginning of until you just getting a job or two doesn't really mean as much as more consistency
Yeah, definitely.
one job leading. What's hard in a career, particularly in the beginning, is in writing, is for one writing job to beget the next, to move you to the next. It's not always that organic. And I had a string of jobs in the beginning that they were fine, and it gave me credits and experience, but they didn't lead to something else necessarily. And that's why I kind of ultimately sort of expanded into writing screenplays from writing television, just because I wanted to, kind of broaden my opportunities, double my opportunities to sell things. Yeah, I mean, and like I said, everybody's got their path. Everybody has their trajectory in terms of what your career is supposed to be. But I will say, and it's very easy at a certain point in a real down moment in your career to want to give up and just say, look, I've been doing this forever. I just can't get a toehold. Maybe I'm not a good writer, et cetera, et cetera. And I've said to people, if you give up, if you're doing it, look how hard it is to make things happen. If you give up, it'll never happen. So what are you doing? If you don't want to write, if you really don't want to be a writer, or it's not for you, that's fine. And a lot of it as a writer becomes, your financial situation, because you do have to eat, you do have to pay the rent, you do have to make a living. That's a total reality. And and especially nowadays, it's harder. Fees are very different now, and being on staff on a streaming show, you're dealing with much shorter periods of time, and all of that. Things have changed a lot over the course of the years that I've been writing. So I'm very mindful of people of having to make a living. I along the way did lots of other work while I was writing scripts and pitching scripts and things like that, because you wanted to bring money in, and you need a little impact. Part of it, and that's one thing I learned in therapy, was that I needed impact. You go in and you keep being turned down for job after job, or like you're pitching your ass off, and nothing's happening. You just have no impact. But you take a job, whatever, right? Yeah, there were always writing jobs. There were always kind of like publicity writing jobs, journalism jobs, those kinds of things, manual writing, whatever it was. It was all writing, but it was very, very different. But it had a beginning, middle, and an end to it, and I'd get a paycheck at the end of it. So it was satisfying in that way. At least I had some of that conclusiveness that as a writer that I wasn't necessarily getting at a particular point as a screenwriter. And that took some of the mental pressure off of me, and it was okay. And suddenly it was like, you know what? I have a life without you hiring me. And that's a big thing to remember, that we're not just our careers. We have lives, we have personal lives and families, romantic lives, children, whatever anybody has that's not connected to their work specifically. You have travel, you have whatever it is you want to do. So we're not everything. We focus on the career because, you feel like if you're not really focused on your career 100%, it's not going to happen, and you're not going to sustain it. Sustaining the career is the big part of it. But it's important as a writer, particularly in the beginning, to have feel like you're having impact. And the only way you look at impact as a writer is, did I sell something? Is it being made? Am I getting another job from it? And that can be elusive. So you have to be very careful about finding ways to be impactful. It's like, well, my work's not working out right now, but my relationship is great. Or, I'm not getting that writing job, but I just had a great trip to whatever, Canada, and I had a great time. I felt good. The other thing I learned early on was that you don't always have to be writing. If you're not writing every second, you're not betraying anybody. You're not being a professional.
I like
you need to have moments where you're just, where you're just being, where you're just thinking, where you're reading, where you're experiencing other people, where you're living your life, so that you have something to write about. How many things that we write about and we end up pitching are because we've experienced something, or we knew people who did something, we met somebody along the way. I can't tell you how often. Of course, as a writer, over time, you everything you experience, you tend to see, oh, is there a story in this? Or somebody, you'll be on vacation, you'll meet some stranger, and they hear you're a writer, and everybody's got a story. Oh, this would make a great book, great movies. Like the word, those words are just, what
Often terrible as well.
Oh, yeah, it depends upon what they are. Well, sometimes people have good ideas, but not always. But people will or they'll just mention something. Where are you from? Oh, they'll tell me about their town. It's like, there's a good story in that. What if that sounds fun? So but if you weren't out having your life, whatever that means, even if it means going to the local, the Starbucks down the block and having a coffee for 2 hours, with somebody, you're just out there in the world and you're learning things. So I do recommend. I think a lot of writing, it's like, how can you balance being, an impactful, efficient, creative writer and really get stuff done and also feel good about yourself and enjoy your life. That's the goal. That's the nirvana of being a writer when you can, and I don't want to use the expression have it all because that sounds pretentious and nobody has it all or should have it all. But I think it's about enjoying your life. Now, I will honestly say during the periods where I've been working more and I've had movies made and I see things happening or with these books I've written or whatever, I'm a happier camper because I've got great things going on and I'm proud of them and my work is being recognized and I'm making a living and the dream is happening, so that definitely puts you in a better mood. But you have to find ways when you're not in a good mood or things are not happening, either creatively or work-wise, to feel good, to take care of yourself along the way. And I don't think always enough people do that. There's a lot of woe is me and a lot of victimization, and that's not going to get you anywhere, and you have to be, relatively prolific. You can't just write something and say, okay, I wrote this script, it's going to sell. I'm moving on to another part of my life and I'll come back to this. Got to get something out there, write something new, keep it going. I'm not saying you got to write 3 new scripts a year or whatever, but you need to keep keep your batteries charged, keep honing your craft. And I'm amazed how much just when you think, oh, I've been doing this a long time, I've learned everything. I haven't learned anything. It's like I've learned a lot of things, but there's always stuff to learn. And that's exciting, as you're moving through your career to always feel like there's a new challenge. And writing these novels, was a great challenge. I mean, I learned a ton. I mean, I learned so much from writing my first book. It was like I have to amortize this knowledge. I have to do it again because it's like I've learned so much and it's so valuable. So I learned mostly that I could do it, which was something I wasn't quite sure I could. That was a big part of it. But yeah, it's about keeping moving forward, not giving up. But I don't like using the term reinvention because that sounds like you've given up to something and gone to something else sometimes. But I think it's really more like expansion of what you do. And I've been very fortunate to be able to have written in various disciplines and had different facets of writing that I've been able to sort of make a dent in, and each thing has fed the other thing. It's like writing stage plays has gotten me work writing a movie, and writing a movie has gotten me this. Everything kind of feeds off of each other, and I think it's important. I think it just takes away some of the tunnel vision that we have. Especially honestly, if you're an incredibly successful TV writer and you're running shows and you're working all the time and whatever, yeah, you don't have time, you're focused on just moving forward in that discipline and that's it. But if like most writers, like most of us, you're kind of a journeyman writer, middle class writer who's just out there trying to make things happen. It's nice to be able to change it up a little bit. And, it used to be where, well, if you're writing television, you can't write movies. Oh, you're writing movies, you can't write television. That line is blurred, was blurred a long time ago. And that's great because there's not, there's certainly differences between writing the two, but there are more similarities than differences between them. So it's good, people automatically, people who are film producers, film production companies, they're all trying to do television now, often just television because the film business has changed so much. So it's keeping your mind open to other disciplines and expansion is really, really helpful. And I'm telling you, time goes really fast. So you think, well, I don't want to take 6 months of my life to write a book. or write this screenplay that maybe but nothing will happen with. That 6 months is over in a flash. We know that, and it's so great at the end of that period to have something to show for it. About 5 years ago, I had rotator cuff surgery. I had really bad rotator cuff tear. And I was in this giant brace, which I actually told the whole story in my book, The Last Birthday Party.
Yep.
I gave it to the character, but I was in this giant brace for 6 weeks. And it was, I mean, I can't even explain. I wish I had a picture of it that would do it justice, but it was just literally think about having like a complete, the only way I can say is when you go to like a stadium or something and people, some people are walking around with that thing or that tray over their shoulders to sell drinks or hot dogs or peanuts, or it's like that. You're just walking around this giant thing. It was like this pad, and I was in it 24/7, except when I showered, which was horrific. And it was very painful. And I couldn't, I was like, I'm not going to type for 6 weeks. I can't do that. What am I going to do? So I had started writing a stage play right before I had my surgery. And I was like, damn it, I'm going to finish that play.
Oh,
even if I have to
amazing.
do one finger. And at the end of the 6 weeks, I had finished the play, and it was such a painful period of time physically, but I was so glad I had something to show for it. And, otherwise I could have said, well, I'll just wait. Well, that's fine, but it goes fast. It really goes fast. So I always encourage people you're always better off writing something than not writing something. And you don't always have to finish something. But if you don't put something down on the page, you got nothing. And it's much easier to rewrite from something that you've already written. Getting the words down, getting that first draft is generally the hardest thing. But people will say, you're really disciplined. How do you do it? And I don't, it's like, if I don't do it, it doesn't get done. It's not like I can, come up with an idea and then like hire 9 people to write it. It's like, no, I have to do it. So if you want a career and you want to churn out material and you want to, be the best writer you can, the most proficient writer you can, the most prolific, you have to do it. There's no shortcut. There really isn't. Unfortunately, I wish there was. I wish you could.
Same.
Somebody told me that they said, "Oh, have you heard about the thing where you can?" It's like you can enter your script or your book in a program, and they can read the whole thing back to you, so you don't have to read it. And it's like, I don't want that. I want the program where somebody like somebody writes it for you, and then you can listen to it back. But there's no such thing. You gotta do the work.
There's a lot. Okay, I love this. I've written like literally, I think 100 points. 2 key points. One, when you had that big injury, and you were talking about this earlier in terms of like the victim mentality. And I think that's really important. You had a really bad injury, and I know I've been reading your book, which is awesome, which we'll talk about in a sec. That wasn't just like a small injury. That was an injury where you could have literally just lied down and woe is me and not do any work. But you literally, this is the fantastic example of how you still typed with one finger to move forward. And I think that's so crucial because to look back at that period and see that you've actually written something you'd forget about the pain. You just say, wow, I was able to achieve something despite the odds being against me.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And when the play has not been produced yet, but we did do a stage reading of it with an audience, nice. And it went really well. It was very, very funny. And it was some of it was a little autobiographical. And I said to myself, man, I wrote this and it's good. People like it. And I did it mostly with one finger. So it was, so I look back on that period of time of being in this brace, despite all the pain and the difficulty and this cumbersome thing around 24/7. I feel like I have a sort of a warm feeling about that period too, because I did get stuff done. I read some really good books. I wrote this play, finished this play. I caught up on movies, and it's like, I don't know. Everything is like, I'm not one to retreat. I'm more like I'll push forward and just, doggedly push forward, and I think that's something that's part of my personality and probably something that's helped sustain my career, for a long time. Yeah, there were times in the beginning of my career where it was very hard and for many years in the beginning, and to work consistently. And sometimes people would say, well, do you have a B plan? It's like, what? No, this is my B plan is my A plan. This is what I want to do, and I mean, I gave up another career to do this, so I wasn't going to go back to that. And this is what I was going to do. So it's a roller coaster. It really is.
We'll get into it as well. You had a very interesting career or careers before. But I just wanted to finish up on this point because I think it's really important and it will resonate with a lot of people that you're more than what you do. And obviously, if we're the accountant or a doctor or a writer, we want like consistent work, but that's not what defines us. And you were saying there are other aspects that make you whole. And it's very easy to just, especially as a writer, because at the end of the day, you're kind of like pitching for yourself. The money's not necessarily coming in. And so you could really define yourself as a success or failure purely on how much work you're getting. You talked about travel, friends, relationships, and the ultimate goal is obviously to be working, but to be happy. And we don't hear enough about that. We hear it just about, oh, how's work? Or have you sold anything today? But it's not really in your standard conversations included that like happiness factor. And I think that's really crucial, and it will change people's mindsets when we think kind of that way as well.
Yeah, it's very important. But again, it's something that I think you need a little career perspective on. Or you need a certain number of years, or a certain number of experiences to get to that. I'm not, Mr. Wise Man, but I've had enough experiences, to kind of figure it out, and figure out what works for me. And also when you've achieved, I think along the way in a career, you kind of figure out, okay, what's it really going to be? It's not about making $1 trillion. It's not about winning Oscars. It's not about whatever. What is it for you? And for some people, it is about the money and the Oscars and the fame, whatever. But I mean, by and large, you realize what you want out of a career, and it takes a lot of twists and turns to get there. And then you realize, look, I'm going to be at this level. Maybe this will be my level. This is where I belong, let's say, or, big things can happen, but also if you can work fairly regularly at what you do and get projects actually made that people can see or read or whatever, that's an enormous accomplishment. So I say to writers, never underestimate. People will say, well, you've had all these movies made. I guess I just had one made. They'll say, I just had one made, but that's old hat for you. I guess it's not a big deal. I say, no, it's a huge deal. Getting anything made is like such a giant accomplishment. And I've been fortunate to have had a string of things made, but every single one, it's like everyone is like your baby. Everyone is just like, it's just so great for it to happen because it's so difficult for it to happen. And I'm just so happy for people when they get something made and they're able to see their words, expressed through actors and visuals and whatever it is, because it can be very elusive. And there's a lot of happiness to that. But again, you do have to find other ways to be happy when the career isn't really happening at that moment.
That's a very nice perspective. So how are you when, let's just say you sell something and then it doesn't get made, and then as opposed to where it's actually progressing quite far, and then for whatever reason doesn't get made? Because there's a lot of steps, as you said, it takes a whole village to actually create something. How do you deal with that?
Well, it's hard. I've had, in the TV movie world, I would say most of what I've started off writing has been made. Occasionally, we've gotten to a place where, like, I pitch something, I've done an outline, and then the project dies for whatever reason. It just isn't working. But by and large, most of what I've started has gotten made. However, I've written many spec screenplays over the course of time that did not sell or sold and laid in development, what they call development hell for forever. And that's difficult because it's really out of your hands then. You sell a script to a studio or a network, whatever, a movie, let's say. And this is, back in the day where you could sell, movies, spec screenplays sold to studios and production companies. They went into development much more than now. But, you would do your work on it. You take the notes, you do your drafts, your rewrites, and then they would hand it off to somebody else to work on. And then they'd hand it to somebody else. And then they bring it back to you because you had the original idea and they didn't like the other writer, whatever it turns out. But it dies in the end. I mean, I've had a number of those projects, pilots that I've written that sold, screenplays that I've written that sold that went through development of to whatever extent and didn't get made. And that's frustrating because you know that they didn't buy something because they didn't think it had a future to it. And you kind of wonder, like, well, you bought this, so what did you think you were buying? Really. And a lot of times you find out they didn't really think your script was so great. They just loved the idea, and I will go to my grave saying that ideas sell. It's not scripts that sell as much as ideas sell. It's all about the idea. and does the idea turn them on? And they have said if you have a D idea it's better to have an A idea and a D execution than a D execute and then a D idea and an A execution.
So interesting.
Hopefully you have both. Hopefully you've got a great idea and a great execution, but it's the idea. I've really learned to believe it's in the idea because so often it's like, yeah, I like that idea. I mean, I've sold scripts where literally nobody's ever said, "Oh, what a great script this is," or anything. It's more like, "We love the idea. Let's work on it." It's like, "Well, what about this whole script that I wrote? We love the idea."
Okay.
So there's a lot of that, but yeah, it's frustrating when you go through a long process and well, two things. You know, or you think that something will be can really make an entertaining film or TV show or something that is commercial or people will want to see, and then it dies, and then you see what does get made, and like why did that get made and my thing didn't get? But there's no real logic to it. You can't look at it that way. It's a big roll of the dice. But yeah, that it can be frustrating. It really can, and unfortunately, there are a lot of writers who've made very nice livings and had good careers writing a lot of things that never got made, but they got paid to write something or rewrite something or that kind of thing. So yeah, there are all kinds of ways that happens, and it can definitely be frustrating.
It is so interesting. We could talk about this for 100 hours, but the concept of never actually making something and still being inverted commas successful it is really awesome and inspiring, but it's also quite scary.
It is, yeah.
We've spoken about, the hardships that you've faced and also the transition into the industry. And I believe you're a publicist or you're a publicist in marketing. I couldn't tell which one, or maybe you were both. So was the transition from, potentially a stable job into this world of writing where it just sounds like Russian roulette, you don't know when you're going to work? Is that what you're alluding to in terms of the hardship going from that into writing?
Yeah. Well, I was pretty naive. I didn't think I was at the time. I was it was like very early in my career, but I had very early on, even before I graduated from college, I ended up getting these jobs in movie publicity, and I just sort of fell into it. But I really liked it. It was really fun. I love movies, and I like the concept of publicity and marketing and all of that. And it sort of seemed natural to me in a way that I didn't really expect. So I had a number of jobs. And I got a steady paycheck, and they were, I mean, I guess for the time they were decent paying jobs. I don't know, but I really enjoyed the work. But as the time went on, and I sort of like rose in the ranks, I became a little less. It was less what I wanted to do. It became more political and things like that. And I really wanted to write. I was around creative people all the time, and I kind of wanted to be on the other side of the table at a certain point. And that's when I just sort of like literally just I was actually handed a long-term contract by the company at the time, and I was like, I can't sign this.
Wow.
And I didn't really know why, but I just realized I couldn't be there anymore. And ultimately, after a period of time, I left, and I left to be a writer. But I got a lot of encouragement about TV writing at the time. And I worked with a few people who were kind of moving out of the publicity world and had moved into TV. And it was a time, like I said, it was a time where there were a lot of specs TV scripts that were being written, and you could get freelance writing work in TV. And it just seemed like, I mean, naively, I thought, well, I've been lucky. I've worked regularly since I'm out of college, or right before I was out of college. I should be able to do this too. I should be able to work regularly. I didn't think about it too much. I just barreled through. I was just not happy in my job, in the publicity job. At a certain point, I felt I had done it. I didn't want my boss's job. When you realize that, it's like, where are you going? And then ultimately, I just really jumped into that deep end of the pool, and it took me a while to realize, wow, that was a really big jump. I think much more than I thought. But then you get into it, and it was fine. I've never regretted. I will go back to, sometimes I go back to places that I used to work as a publicist, and to pitch an idea, a movie idea or something. And I'm like,
exciting.
I never want to go back into those offices. It was fine, and if people do it, it's great. But it was just, I didn't really look back. I really didn't look back to that. But it was a big rupture. It really was. And essentially, going from getting a regular paycheck to really subsisting off project to project is very different. It's a very different mindset, and can be difficult.
It would be very scary. And just on that, actually, I assume you were writing throughout, or did you just quit and then decide to write again?
Well, I had started writing. I was started off my original goal when I was in college. I wanted to be a film critic. I wanted to write for a great daily newspaper or a great alternative press or something, and be a film critic. I started all that. I went to college and all that in a period where film criticism was really meaningful. And I grew up as a kid. I loved movies and I loved reading reviews and things. And all that. So that's what I wanted to do. And I did that in college, high school and college. I was the film reviewer for the high school paper and the college paper and whatever. I did that. And that's what I wanted to do. But I didn't see it. I didn't see a way into making a real living at it. And I just sort of fell into this publicity thing. And I felt like, okay, well, this is a good option. I'll see where it goes. And I just ended up in it for a while. So I always had the writerly instinct in me. I was a journalism major in college. Um, but then I started thinking about writing again at a certain point, and I started taking writing classes. I took a fiction writing class,
Nice.
and everybody was writing a book in it. And I wrote. I didn't finish a book in it, but I did write maybe the first 100 some odd pages of a book. I remember that, and we had to read the pages out every Saturday morning. And the teacher, she was very quirky, but she was nice. And I remember her saying to me, she says, "You're really funny." And I was like, really? You know, I read these pages and people would laugh. And, it's not that I didn't think I was not funny, but it didn't really, I guess it was the first time I had written something that people were really reacting to. And it made me think like, well, maybe I can do this, and I got a lot of encouragement from that teacher. And then I never finished that book, but it did get me going. It did. And then I started really looking into spec TV scripts and what that was about and really learning about it so that when I did finally leave my job, my publicity job, and started to write these spec TV shows to get work, to get an agent and to get work, I had really done a lot of homework, to prepare for it. So it wasn't as much writing as just sort of preparing to write.
Well, you would have seen it. You were
Yeah.
immersed in it, so that's really awesome. The one thing when I heard that you're a film critic, I don't know how you can do it. I would feel too much as the people pleaser to write something bad about someone. How did you cope with that? You didn't care, tell me.
Well, to this day, I'm a film reviewer for the Los Angeles Times, and I'm a freelancer contributor for them, and I've been doing it a very long time, and I love doing it. It's very soulfully satisfying. I work for great people, and it's just fun, and I love watching movies, and it sort of forces me to watch things that I wouldn't necessarily think about watching, but I don't want to say forces, but it's sort of
Yeah.
like you get the assignment and you watch the film, and very often there are things that are really good that I'm really so happy that I watch. I've learned so much. Particularly, I review a lot of documentaries. I've learned so much too. And look, you're there to do a job, and I'm not gonna. I think I'm a very fair reviewer, and I certainly am very pro writer. I try to, I think I try to look for the good in things, but sometimes you're really handed a bad movie to review, and you've got a job to do,
Yeah.
and you have to make your recommendations. So I think I'm pretty fair, but I also say as a writer, I think I'm a screenwriter. I think I'm very qualified to talk about to talk about screenplays, to talk about stories,
Agreed.
much, more so than maybe, if you're not, so I don't feel like this. I don't feel torn. I just feel like I can separate myself from it, and I love the writing part of it. It's a little different side of the brain. I really love the that journalistic writing part of it. So yeah, I've been doing it like 15 years for them. So at this point, it's just I've written. I'd say primarily, I've watched by and large, better movies than not good movies. But there are always some clinkers in there for sure.
Clingers. There's a few things. Has anyone ever gotten mad at you or emailed you or said anything like I didn't like this or
Yes, yes.
what?
I literally had one experience where the director, there's the producer, the director was very unhinged about it, and
Wow.
it took a little bit of doing to sort of get him to back off in terms of where we were going, what was going on with this. But that was very rare, and I had a lot of support from the paper on it, and basically it was just somebody who was very sensitive and didn't want to hear anything bad. And I was not the only person who wrote a negative review of their film. It was a weird moment.
Well,
I did. I did have one experience, and it is reflected. I have it it's a version of it in my book, The Last Birthday Party, which is about a screenwriter, where a screenwriter who has been a film critic for X amount of time as well.
And a
And
torn rotator cuff as well.
yeah. And I did have an experience where I met an actor. I was involved in some reading situation, some stage reading situation, and I met an actor who had directed a film that I had reviewed not well. And he said to me, we were working on this thing we were doing, and then out of nowhere he said, "Are you the same Gary Goldstein who writes for the Los Angeles Times?" I said, "Yeah." He goes, "You didn't like my movie, did you?" And I was like, "Well, what was I going to say? I didn't like your movie. You read the review. I'm sorry." I just said, it's just my opinion. I think a lot of people, but you got a lot of nice reviews from it, or whatever. And he was like, "Yeah, now somebody else would have said, yeah, it's just." And I've had people say, "Listen, I learned a lot from your review. Very fair criticism. Thank you for taking the time to watch the movie and to be thoughtful about what you wrote." I mean, that's the professional way to do it.
Yes.
And nobody wants a bad. Listen, I've gotten my share of bad reviews as a writer, believe me, and I know what it's like. And that's one thing that I feel qualifies me, to critique anything, because I've been on both sides of it, and I know how hard it is. But I also have learned from bad reviews too. Some things that, okay, maybe they were right about that, or maybe I never realized that, or maybe next time I will do it a little bit differently. So I think I think
That's
it's
a
okay.
very healthy mindset, the reflection of how you can get better. And we've spoken about your
Yeah.
mindset. It is just weird that if someone was to complain about their review to you, nothing can really be changed. It's already out there. Like you could.
Yeah, no, no, but I've been asked, one problematic person. I have to say, for the thousands of reviews I've written, to have only one person who was really,
It's
really
pretty
wigged
good.
out, is not bad.
Very good.
And uh, the thing is, when you write a review and you've made a mistake, that I understand, because that's something that, if you've just sort of missed the boat on something, and your editors can just do, and you can just, they haven't seen the film, there's just so much they can know and do. So
True.
it's really up to you, to be as accurate as possible. And if you miss the boat on something or completely get something wrong, I understand that. But if you've gotten it right and it's just your opinion, and honestly, bad reviews, they sting. I mean, they just do. But yeah, I think uh, it's you just do the best you can with it, like everything. And maybe, I don't know, maybe being a reviewer has kind of helped me with my own work in terms of pitching things, or whatever, to kind of be a little more critical of myself, and be a little, and dissect what I'm coming up with a little bit more, to not be as superficial about writing something. I don't know. There may be a connection.
It definitely, all of that. You're the only person I know that does like literally all the writing modalities. So they would definitely inform each other in some capacity.
Yeah.
And you've also changed my perspective on what a film critic would be. Because when I was, I used to, when I was younger, read the newspaper of all the film criticisms, or however you word it. And I always thought it was someone who wanted to be in the industry, but was never a writer. And then to actually hear that you are the writer, I
Yeah.
always thought it was like those that, oh, I'm going to butcher it, those that can't
Can't do
teach.
teach.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then you
Those
come
who,
in.
yeah, those who can't, or as Woody Allen said, those who can't teach Jim. So
But you actually you've proved me wrong in that you
yeah,
actually are the most qualified person, because you do all of that different writing. And actually, even on that, we talked about playwright, journalism, screenwriting. You are now writing novels, which is a crazy leap. I say
yeah,
this, and I don't say this lightly. Most people are a writer in like the one modality, or maybe two. It sounds like 4 or 5. You briefly mentioned that you wanted to try writing books. What actually made you do the leap? Because it's one thing to have that thought, but to actually put pen to
yeah.
paper, and it's a lot
Right,
longer than a
exactly.
screenplay as well.
Well, I've always been a big reader, generally fiction reader. I read nonfiction, but generally fiction reader ever since I was a kid. I'm always reading a book, and I've always wanted to write a book. And people have always said to me, "Oh, you should write a book. You write a good book." But it was like, it wasn't like I don't know how to write a book necessarily. It's more like I can't take the time. How long will that take? And I can't take the time out of my screenwriting and all the other work that I get. And certainly that, for when I'm on assignment, you do have deadlines and things. So you really can't just, jam in a page, page here and page there. But at the beginning of 2020, before the pandemic, the very end of 2019, actually, I read something online, and there's a writer, and he said, if you're a screenwriter and you've always wanted to write a novel and you don't think you have the time, think of it this way. If you could write a page a day, at the end of the year, you'd have the first draft of your novel done. And I just read that. It was very basic. And, I've said this joke many times. It was not such a novel idea that he had, but it was really, it spoke to me. So I started writing a book. I didn't know what exactly I was going to write. I kind of knew the world I wanted to be writing in and kind of character, what I wanted to say. But I just started, and I did the page a day thing, started like January 2nd or 3rd or something. Well, the pandemic hit in the middle of March. So the business kind of shut down. The industry sort of shut down. So I did have a little more time, and I just kept going. And by July, I had the first draft of it written, and I read it, and I was like, it's pretty good. I like it. I'd read it. And then I got it edited, had a professional editor, go through it and edit it for me. And then I just said, I'll try to see if I can get a publisher. I did all this work. I should try to get a publisher. And eventually I did. It was its own process, its own thing, and all of that stuff.
Can I stop you there? Because it is very hard to just get a publisher. And I think that you tried a few times and you pitched to people won't respond to emails, all of that. It's very hard. So I'd like you to speak to that, because you could be kind of, I don't know what the right word is, but if you're getting a few no's, you might just want to give up, but you still keep on going to get this book made.
Yeah. Well, what I did was listen, like the movie business or the TV business, people are, they're interested in things that are really unique or from somebody very famous or somebody who's had a lot of success, or that's just the priority. There aren't tons of big publishers anymore. There's been a lot of consolidation. There are many, many book agents out there. They're very hard you can reach them, but they're very hard to kind of get a toehold with. I had sent my book, the manuscript. I queried maybe 40, 45 not authors, agents.
Yeah.
And of them, a lot of people wanted to read like the first couple of chapters, but of those, I've got maybe half a dozen that wanted to read the whole book. And little by little, I could just see where it was going. It was like the response started being, I love this book. It's a book I'd want to read. I can't sell it. And I never quite knew what that meant. But when I heard that 5 times, I was like, okay. Agents are all kind of looking. I always feel like agents are generally looking for the same thing, or they're all kind of on similar wavelengths. They know what sells out there, and they can love something, but if they don't feel they can sell it. And general fiction, this book is, it became categorized as a romantic comedy, which it is, but the approach was this general fiction, so that's hard. I wasn't writing a YA book. I wasn't writing a thriller. It wasn't a mystery. It wasn't a sci-fi book. It wasn't a fantasy. It didn't quite have that. It was just, I wrote what I wanted to write, the kind of book I like to read and what I wanted to write, and hope that people would respond. And I wrote a book that I've read many books like, so I figured, I'm hopefully in good company. But so I saw where this was going, but at the same time, I started to submit to independent press, smaller publishers that would take material not through directly, not through an agent. And that's ultimately how I ended up getting my book published, because I connected with I had a number of these, ultimately, strangely, I had a number of these independent publishers who, I guess their mandates are different. They just need to like something. They certainly want it to sell, but it's usually there's like one or two people making a decision, and that's it. So I had a handful of these independent publishers who were interested in the book, and ultimately I met on Zoom with all of them, and I ended up going with a relatively new publisher called Hadley House. They're based in Minneapolis, and I just loved them. There were three women that were they totally got the book. They were delightful to talk to. They were really, I just felt like immediately in good hands. And it was kind of important for me in this first book, because the main character is a man. I'm a man. Most books are read by women. The majority of books are read by women. So I wanted to make sure that I had, a lot of, women who were out there trying to sell the book. And I said to them to begin with, as women, do you feel like women will respond to this book because the main character is a man? And they said the kind of man this main character is, women will respond to. And that was
Ah,
like, that
that's
was brilliant. I mean,
yeah.
nobody had said that. And I was like, you got me. And it turned out to be a wonderful experience. And they actually picked up my second book, and that was really great. So yeah, so that was it. But it's not easy. But I also say, you can't give up at that. Don't not write a book because you think it's hard to be published. There are many routes to getting a book published, and there's certainly self-publishing, which is doable. It's problematic in some ways, but it's also, if your goal is to get your book out and have it available to be read and whatever. I mean, there are lots of very, very good self-published books out there, so don't look at it. It doesn't have to be all or nothing. But yeah, it was definitely a process and a learning curve. I learned a ton trying to, get these books out, certainly marketing the books. And sometimes, the writing of the book isn't as hard. Sometimes it's just
It's
marketing
the
and getting it out there. Very, very time consuming, but also very joyful, especially when you're talking about something that you believe in.
It is so awesome to hear because we don't often talk about, like, we see these fantastic books and I'm reading it and it is you're a very good writer. And, we just see the books made, but you don't see, you're adding in aspects of yourself. I know it's not necessarily about you, but
Right.
just that process of getting it made, there's a lot of fear that would come in. There would be doubts. There would also, even the time commitment, because you might not get any money from this. And
Right.
all of these little things are happening, but you talked about the 1 page a day, which obviously probably became like 20 pages a day.
Yeah.
And then there are rejections. There's all of these hurdles. Then you finally find this amazing team who actually get the book. And, it could be a bit disconcerting. Maybe that's not right. Where people are like, we like this, but we just can't sell it. And then it becomes purely about profit or loss. But you've
Yeah.
met someone that can actually sees what you've done and goes, you know what, let's do this together. And I think that's
Right.
so cool that you can go through all of that. And then at the end of the day, you're smiling, you're so proud of the book, because you
Yeah.
could be defeated if, I don't know, you may have wanted to sell 1 million copies and then you've only
Right.
sold 100,000. But you've talked about the whole process, the way through, and how, yeah, there have been challenges and hurdles, but you're so proud that you got it to that stage. And I think that's really awesome. We could just start it, I haven't sold enough books. But
Yeah.
that doesn't get us anywhere.
But and also, you like with the movie business, if you're a screenwriter, it's not, if you say, well, I'm not going to be happy unless I sell 1 million books and my book is made into a movie. You can't do that. I mean, yeah, that's fantastic if that happens. Of course, who wouldn't want that? But you do it in steps. First get the book published, and that whole publishing experience is a great lesson. And then you see, and you hope you sell books, and you hope, more than anything, you, as a writer, if you believe in something, you want to share it with people. You want people to get joy from it. You want people to relate to it. You want people to, I mean, think about books and movies that, and plays and TV shows that we've experienced that, have helped just, I don't want to say changed our lives, but they've really just brought us so much joy, and entertainment. And that's what you want to do for people. So you have to look at that, do you want to sell 1 million books? Do you want to write a movie that grosses $300 million or whatever? Of course, but that can't be the priority, because those things don't just happen. They kind of, I don't want to say they don't just happen. They actually just happen, sometimes accidentally. You don't even know. Things take off. Why is something suddenly, why does something suddenly get great word of mouth? It's random. So, it does go back to, please try to enjoy the ride, and the experience, and be a little less focused on the result, because no matter what, sometimes the result is just it's out of our hands. It really is. And you just hope that you're lucky, that you just, the writing gods or the movie gods are smiling on you.
You can only
at that
control
moment.
what you can control, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
And now, obviously, the experience has gone so well, despite some of the ups and the downs. Even though we're talking all about the journey, you've written another novel, which is The Mother I Never Had. Why go through all of that again? I know we've talked about how proud you are, but that could also be scary. And they
Yeah, it was
actually
scary, and
changed.
also
Oh, sorry for cutting you off. I also heard from other authors over the years, the second book's actually harder to write than the first book.
ah, well, it was different. I mean, well, first of all, most of my work in general has been comedy, romantic comedy, family comedy, dramedy. I've written a couple of thrillers. I've written some mysteries. But by and large, it's been more on the comedy spectrum. So this book is very serious. It's a very serious story. It's a full drama. It's a family drama. And it was just something I wanted to write. And I'll talk in a minute about like where the idea came from. But it was because I kind of leaped into it last year, and I did the same thing. I started January, the very beginning of January of 21, and I wrote it. It took me longer to write because I had script work to do, and I was also marketing The Last Birthday Party, which came out last August. But I did get it done by the fall, and but it was a longer process. I did more outlining of it than I did of the first book. It's a very kind of it's a mystery, but it's a twisty story. There are surprises in it, things that I didn't always know were going to happen, but they did. But it did take more outlining, and it was serious. And I generally look at things through a more comedic or more offbeat lens. And so the funniest thing was when my editor read the book, the publisher's editor, when she read the book, she had edited my first book. And she knew it was a drama. When she was done, she said, not only do I love this book, but she said, you found comedy in the humor in the darkness.
Oh,
And that was
amazing.
great. And I
That's
was like,
cool.
it was great to hear that. And I don't want the whole thing. It's not a dour book by any means. It's just, but it's serious. It's about very, very real life situations, about family, about finding your family, and idols falling, and all these kinds of, kind of big picture themes. So I love the fact that if somebody can feel, I don't want them to be necessarily laughing, but if they can feel a little lighter at the moment. So some of my characters definitely, much jauntier than others. So that was a good experience. But it was not, I wouldn't say it was more difficult to write, but it did take a little longer. I was in territory that I was a little less familiar with, meaning the straight on drama. Because I wanted it to be, it was a dramatic story. I didn't feel there was a comedy in this. I mean, I'm sure, Judd Apatow, or somebody could have, turned it into a funny story. I guess there's a funny story to be told of this, but that was not the story I wanted to tell. I wanted to tell something that I felt was meaningful. And the story is basically, it's called The Mother I Never Had. It's basically about a man who he's about 30, turns 30, and his father, who raised him as a single parent since birth, dies unexpectedly. And at 30 years old, this guy is as an orphan, because his mother was out of the picture from day one. And he discovers through a series of events that the person that he was always told was his mother was a complete lie. And the person that he thought died in childbirth that was not the case. And this person
Wow.
that he's kind of idolized his whole life, the picture he had on his bookcase of the woman who he was told was his mother, and he's looked at her for guidance and all, and all that for 30 years. She wasn't it. And he discovers, because after the father dies, this mystery about who the mother really is, and his father was lying to him his entire life. But he loved his father dearly, and his father was a great dad. He was a literature professor at a local college. Everybody loved him. He was just a cool guy, yet he was lying to his son for 30 years. And you discover why he was lying, who the real mother is, and what happens at 30 years old when you find yourself with a parent for the first time. And I thought that was pretty interesting. And it came to me because it was a very, very extrapolated story from just a seed of my life. When I was 30, my mother died, and she was young, and we were very close. And I was young, she was young, and it was just I would think about for years, what would it be like if I had a mother again? My father, fortunately, he's gone now, but he lived a very long life, and we were close. But there was something about the mother relationship that I really missed, and particularly my mother. So I just sort of fantasized, what would it be like if I found out I really had a mother, that there was another mother, another person came into my life,
Mm.
that I could have that dynamic. And that's just something I thought about, and I would see after my mother died, I'd be, sitting in the car, and I'd see somebody crossing the street, and they looked like my mother. For a second, they looked like my mother.
Yeah.
And I get that feeling like, oh, what if she turned around and that was really her? And it took a while for me to kind of sort of get past it. I don't know if I've ever gotten past it, but you never kind of really get past the death of a family member who you love. But anyway, it just, I've always kind of carried that thought with me. And I spun it into this story, this fictional story, that is, the slight seed of it is from that. So yeah, it was a really, I loved writing it. It was a really good experience. I'm very proud of it. I think my editor, we didn't cut anywhere near as much out of it. It's as we did my first book, which went from, I think I mentioned, went from 98,000 to 84,000 words. This one started at about 96. I think we ended up at 89, 88, something like that.
Getting more
And
efficient.
yeah, more efficient. And yeah, it's I hope people, it's it's a serious book, but it's something people can relate to, I think, because there's so much that goes on now with Ancestry.com and 23andMe and people finding relatives and their own lineage that they never didn't know existed, or they thought was something else, or they learn that their more distant relatives came from a different part of the world than they knew, and all this stuff. And I think it kind of hones in on what we really don't know about our past, often because we don't ask the questions. My sister said to me the other day, for some reason, she said, "What were our great grandparents' names? There was one set of them, my grandfather's parents. What were their names?" I was like, "I don't know."
Mm.
Yeah, I couldn't believe it. Neither of us knew what their names were. And nobody thought to ask what their names were when we were kids and my grandparents were still around. What were your parents' names? What were they like? Were you close to them? We never asked. I don't even know if we saw pictures. Now, I think now, kids are a little more aware of, like deeper generations and things
Yeah.
because of more family trees and ancestry. But it's like, you think about that, what we don't know. So I just think it's something that people will relate to. And I hope I've written a main character. He's a landscape designer. He runs his own business. It's a book like Last Birthday Party. It's set in Los Angeles, but a different area of Los Angeles, and it's about this relationship he ends up in with this woman who claims to be his mother, and how he works all that out, and how it all unravels. And at the same time, he has a girlfriend who he's been with for a couple of years, and he just can't really commit to her, and she's looking for more of a commitment. And it's through the relationship that he develops with the mother that he's able to finally figure out his relationship with the girlfriend, and how that all comes together. So there's a little two-pronged story there. And for people who are horticulture fans, there's a lot of great plant stuff in there, and a lot of great landscaping things. And
Cool.
I live with somebody who's a very talented landscaper, so I've learned a lot about landscaping
Oh, that's
along.
awesome.
And yeah, and it's just I'm very proud of the book. It comes out October 11th. I'm not sure when this is going to air, so look for it out there, and hope you all like it.
That is a great pitch, and as I haven't read it, but it sounds amazing, and it's harnessed from love, and as they said in Hollywood, that's a great idea. So I hope everyone can get around it. Um, People can also check that out in the episode notes, depending on the timing. But I highly recommend everyone follows you or keeps up to date with you, or even buys the other book, because the other book's fantastic, and
Yeah.
so people can check that out. What we're going to do now is a rapid fire segment. So the
Okay.
first thing that I know you've done one of these before, and I've changed up the questions.
Good.
First thing that springs to mind, but if you need time to think about it, that is completely fine. So we've spoken about mindset. What has been your special ingredient to work all these years?
My special ingredient to work,
Yep.
I endurance, or stick to itiveness. I just, like I said earlier, if you don't, if you, it's hard enough to get work and achieve some success by doing it. If you're not doing it, it doesn't happen. So you have to dig in for the long haul if you can. Again, finances have a lot to do with it. I totally understand. I've been there very often where you really do have to make sure you're making a living. But if you can hang in there as long as possible, that's how things get done. If I gave up early on, it wouldn't have happened. So yeah, endurance and stick-to-itiveness.
Very cool. I'm not going to comment on them because I'll just derail them. What is your favorite thing to do when you're not working?
Oh, I'm a big hiker. I love walking, hiking. I like watching movies, television. Again, I'm a big reader. I'm always reading something. For me to be able to like sit down, I read, like I read, I squirrel away little parts of the day to read sometimes, just like between things. But I don't often get the time to sit and read 100 pages at a time. Like when you're on a plane, you can do that. So I love being able to just sort of zone out and do that. It really just, I don't know, the time goes very, very fast. I'm working a lot. My work is my enjoyment as well.
Oh, nice.
Fortunately have a nice environment to work in, and supportive people around me, and a wonderful new dog that I'm very excited about,
What breed?
named Bella, who we adopted about, well, by the time this airs, will probably be about, a couple of months.
Oh, wow.
She's a great yellow lab, so she's great to be spending time with and to be hiking with and whatever. So that's it. And seeing friends and family and all that. And it's just time goes fast.
You're living the dream. What
Yeah.
keeps you what keeps you motivated?
I don't know. It's a good question. At a certain point in my career, it was really just like, to be successful, to make a living, to get a toehold. And now that part of it is just a little bit easier, and I can maybe have a few more choices and things like that. I think it's just, the love of doing it, and keeping my batteries charged and keeping really fresh, and yeah, I mean, it's just, I guess at a certain point, everybody's career, everybody's life, they're sort of ready to wind down or do less or do something different or something. But yeah, I'm very motivated by it, and I've got always have so many balls in the air that and so many things that I'm trying to get done, and things that I'm writing, and projects that I'm on. That it kind of takes over, so it's kind of like it creates its own schedule, it creates its own motivation and all of that. And I think I don't know, I really enjoy doing it, and I enjoy the process, and I also love seeing the results. So that's kept me going, I think.
That's awesome. And as a Jewish man, you've written a lot of like holiday movies, which I find
Christmas
amazing.
movies, yeah.
Christmas
Uh-huh.
movies. I want to know how you got into that, and then you're also writing, or one's about to come out now. So tell me
Right.
a little bit about both.
Well, I've written a lot of TV movies, and the oddly, I wrote, or maybe not so oddly, I wrote a number of years, many years ago, I wrote a spec screenplay, a theatrical feature called Hitched for the Holidays, and it was a big New York comedy, and it was about, because I was at a holiday party, and I was looking around, and I was, some people were with their husbands, wives, partners. Other people were single, and I was thinking, it must be really hard. Like the holidays are tough, and if you're not paired off, uh, it must be really hard. I mean, I remember during period, my earlier in my life when I was, not paired off, not married, it was hard, and then once I was, it definitely got easier, and I don't know, see an idea, and so I decided I want to write a holiday movie. And this was really before Christmas movies were, as prolific and as big as they were. I was writing a feature. And it turned out to be this funny movie about two people who pretend to be dating to satisfy their families over the holidays, and they're both bad at the holidays, and everything bad can happen to them does. But of course, they end up falling for each other in the process. And it was pretty funny. One was Jewish, one was Catholic. They had to pretend to be each other's religion to satisfy the families. You had the Catholic guy pretending to know what to do with the menorah at
Oh, that'd be
Hanukkah.
great.
You had the Jewish girl learning the prayers for Catholic Mass. I mean, it was all that kind of stuff, and it was very fun. And it was actually, of all my screenplays, of my screenplays that didn't sell, it was one of the ones that got the most attention, and people loved. And for some reason, it ultimately didn't get picked up as a feature back then. And then once I started writing for Hallmark, after writing a few movies for them, I showed them the movie, and they were kind of getting more into holiday movies. That movie, Hitched for the Holidays, came out I think in 2012, and they bought the script, and I adapted it for them. I sort of made it more a little bit more G-rated, I guess. And we kept the bulk of the script, and it was great. And
Oh,
it turned out to be a successful movie. So that was my first foray into Christmas movies. And then, I started getting some assignment work. I was handed a book to adapt. It was a Christmas book. and they asked me if if I was interested in adapting it. I loved the book. I thought it was a beautiful book. So I adapted that into a Christmas film that was made called Angel of Christmas. The book was called The Christmas Angel. The movie was called Angel of Christmas. And I adapted I got the rights to a book through a friend called Mr. 365, which was a romantic comedy set at Christmas about a man who celebrates Christmas 365 days out of the year. And it was a really sweet book, and I really enjoyed it. And I had the rights for a number of years, and finally was able to set that up as a film, as a streaming film, and adapted that. And so that I did that one. And it just sort of happened. And then now Christmas movies, they're just so plentiful, and so many are made that there's a lot of opportunity for writers. And basically they're generally romantic comedies that they fall within very similar sort of approaches, and but they're set at Christmas, and there's a lot of Christmas in them, and I grew up around Christmas. I wanted to celebrate Christmas when I was a kid, and we never did. And I definitely learned a lot about it, along the way. But yeah, I mean, I love writing them. I just finished one that was earlier this year that was shot. It's a Hallmark movie called Lights, Camera, Christmas that's coming out at the end of the year. And I'm working on a new one now that hopefully will come out the end of next year. Christmas movie. Yeah, I've done a lot of them, and I love them. They're great. Yeah.
I hope you get Pitbull for Mr. 365. I don't know if you've heard that one before, but doesn't he refer to himself as Mr.? Yeah.
No, he had nothing to do with it.
Who knows? Maybe he could be cast. But that's awesome. What is your next big dream or goal?
My next big dream or goal? Well, I'd love to get one or both of my books made into movies. My book, The Last Birthday Party, which is a romantic comedy about a guy who turns 50 and has a terrible birthday party, and his whole life falls apart in 24 hours. And it's how he kind of puts it all back together in these unexpected ways. And I think it's a great part for an actor of a certain age. I've written the screenplay of it. I've done a script.
Oh, you have? Oh, nice.
Yeah. So, I'm trying to, get that out along with the book and see if we can get it's a movie. It's the kind of movie. It's kind of like when movies like The Little Miss Sunshine or The Descendants, or one of those kind of smaller, very character-based comedies or dramedies that I think could do really well. So I'm trying to get that out, trying to get some talent attached to that, and then The Mother I Never Had, I think would make I think really has all the earmarks for a very castable and relatable feature, or maybe even like a limited series. If I could be so lucky. But those would be great goals. I mean, I'd love, it would really bring those projects full circle, and that would be incredibly gratifying to do.
I definitely saw The Last Birthday as being a movie. I thought, while I was reading it, and as the screenwriter and both of us, I'm sure you were like, that is a movie. I can see all the things you're saying. In terms of ideas, where do you get your ideas from, and how do you kind of keep yourself fresh?
Well, like I said earlier, I do get a lot of ideas from the world around me. A lot of it is from people that I know. I have to say, I have mined my family, very often for things. Many of my stage plays have roots in my family, and relatives and people that I've known. Sometimes they're ideas that are literally those things you read an article about, or see something online or in the paper. What a quirky thing to happen. Is there a way to turn this into a movie or a TV show? I wrote a pilot a couple of years ago called Correspondent, and it's a very, very dark half-hour comedy, kind of like Barry, HBO's show Barry, or Veep, or Russian Doll, and one of these really darker comedies about a foreign TV news correspondent who is basically having a nervous breakdown and wants out of this job that has made him extremely famous and rich, that nobody wants him to leave. And I envision it as a story about how somebody stays in a job that they can't stand, and it's killing them, but they have to do it against this backdrop filled with mayhem. And the idea came, I was watching something on YouTube or something. There's a foreign correspondent on MSNBC here. I guess MSNBC's everywhere, but named Keir Simmons, who's British. And I saw this video of him, and he's like this really kind of, hardy guy. He's good looking. He's very kind of like heroic looking. And he was like in the middle of all this like gunfire. He was like in the middle of a riot or something. I don't know. And he was broadcasting from it, and the bullets are flying and things are going over his head, and he's ducking and running away. And it was not funny because it was very serious, but it was funny because it was just such like what a heroic moment. And and then finally he gets out of the line of fire, and he's just really all cool and everything. And I just said there's got to be something in that. And then I just thought, sort of turned it into this pilot correspondent, which I hope something will happen to one day. So yeah, I mean, it's just kind of the world around me, I think. And then at a certain point too, there are themes that you want to explore. One of the things that I'm always fascinated with, and I explored in The Last Birthday Party, and I've explored in films, is what brings people together romantically, and what splits those same people apart. How do people go from vowing to love, honor, and obey, and they want to spend the rest of their lives with somebody, and then X amount of time later they can't be in the same room with them. What happens? How does that happen? How do you go from here to there? What happens? And can that be avoided? And that's always fascinating to me. So I've written about that a lot, and that's just torn from real life. Just taken from real life.
That's the goal, to enjoy life, and other experiences will happen that will influence the rest of our life. Last two or three, any advice you want to give people who want to try something different or new, but perhaps a bit fearful of doing so?
Yeah, I would just say try it. If you have the time and the resources to do it, and the motivation, try it. In terms of, let's say, writing a book. If you're a screenwriter, you want to write a book, try it. Write a couple of chapters. You don't have to worry about, like, you don't have to necessarily have your whole story down. If you just want to test it, see what it's like. The process of writing a book, those kind of prose is different than screenwriting, playwriting. Do it, test it out, and you might really like it. But if you don't do it, you'll never know. So I think, we worry sometimes about things being perfect and everything having to be exactly a certain way and all of that. But really, you just want to get stuff down on the page and see how you respond to it. And you may find, what, this isn't for me, or you may find, I love this. It's like a duck to water. I really get this. So I say just try. Again, nothing else. If you're not investing any money, and you have the time, I would say, give it a shot.
Awesome. And if you could go back into a time when you were first starting out, what advice would you give yourself, and why?
Well, similar advice to what the TV producer gave me, which, it could take 5 years to kind of get a toehold in this business. Nowadays, it could take less, it could take way more. I don't know, but overnight sensations are just that. And it happens. We read about those, but there are way, 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 way more people who are not, and that's okay. Hopefully we're learning along the way. But just be patient. Be patient, and have a longer view of your career, and figure out what success is to you, what you think success is to you. That's changed a lot. For me, my idea of success has changed a lot over time. So it's good in the beginning to kind of have a, reasonable, like I said earlier, manage your expectations, have a reasonable thought about what you want to be. Take it a step at a time. It's not like, oh, I want to win an Oscar. It's like, I'd like to sell a screenplay. If you sell a screenplay, I'd like to get this screenplay into development. After you do that, I'd like to get this movie made or this TV show made. Then it's made. I'd like to do another one, as opposed, and then see what happens. But it's like, I'm going to write that script and I'm going to win an Oscar. I'm going to make $1 million. It's like, you're just setting yourself up for failure. But maybe it'll happen. I don't know. It's a good goal to think about, I guess. But I don't know. I think you have to be realistic. Take it a step at a time.
I like that. This is the last question before I ask how people can follow you, keep up to date with you, and hear where they can buy your book. What is the one question I should have asked you?
Great question. One question you can ask me. Maybe what's the worst experience I've had as a writer? The worst experience, most embarrassing or most frustrating experience I've had as a writer that has shaped something that I went on to do, or something like that. I don't know.
And how would you answer that?
Well, I've had I mean, share of embarrassing and low moments. I would say, you know what, and this I know sounds corny, but I mean, it's just really be true to yourself. If you listen to your heart about things. I had an agent, my very first agent. He was a much brasher person than I am, and to his credit, I mean, he got stuff done, and he was balls to the wall about stuff. But I remember him saying to me once, you're going to be on the such and such lot, or whatever studio it was. He said, go in and meet so and so. Just knock on her, just go up, show up, knock on her door. It's just you've met her once, or she knows your work. Just not say you're in the building, you want to say hello. And it's like, that doesn't sound like a good idea. Shouldn't I call? No, just show up. Just show up. It's fine. So I go to this executive, and she was like a big executive at I think it was, I don't know where it was, Columbia TV at the time. I don't remember. And I go up to her secretary, assistant, and I say, "Oh, it's Gary Goldstein. I wanted to see so and so." And he goes, "Oh, well, you don't have an appointment or anything, do you?" I said, "No, I was just in the building. I just thought it'd be nice to say hello." He goes, "Oh, okay." And he goes in and I could see this all happening. He goes into to the executive, and she's sitting behind the desk. And literally, I swear to you, the door closes automatically to her office. Like she had like a thing from her desk that would close her door. I don't know how she was
No.
like a guy or something like that. And that was it. He never came. And I was like, okay, I was right. This was not
Yeah.
a good idea.
Oh
And that
wow.
was very embarrassing. And and I was just like, no, you know what? I should have listened to myself. I mean, I may not, maybe there are people who would have gotten away with it or whatever, but and I carried that something very vivid experience to me. I think the assistant eventually came out. I don't know what happened, but came out at the door. But it was very embarrassing. And needless to say, I didn't see her. And she was just a person. I don't know why she couldn't say hello, but whatever.
Have you seen
Um,
it since?
and, and yeah, and I learned a lot from that. I really did. And so I really believe in all of these experiences. Trust your gut reaction. I always say the way things begin is generally the way they end up. So if you get a bad feeling about something in the beginning, it's not going to get better. Trust your instincts. Oh, and here's the other thing. Learn to say no. No is a very powerful word. Very powerful. Probably one of the most powerful words in Hollywood. And I wouldn't say no often. I wouldn't say no, to hurt yourself or to be an idiot. But there are times where you just maybe say no to doing something like my agent telling me to go just drop in unannounced on this high level executive. You know, no, you know what? That's not really what I'm going to do. That's what I should have said. But I was too new. I was too green, and I was too, eager for things to happen. And I felt my agent knew more than I did, and all that. And I look back on that, and it's like, no, that was stupid. So, yeah, I think really, really trusting your gut, learning to say no now and then, and kind of really knowing how to read the room, read the temperature of things, and not just doing something because you think you're supposed to, because somebody told you that that's a way to be successful. If that doesn't resonate to you, writers are, there are some writers who are much more outgoing, much more comfortable in a room or in a meeting, much more verbal. And there are other writers, and it doesn't make anybody a better or worse writer or a better or worse person. They're just more comfortable. They're just more or less comfortable, in those situations. So I say, you've got to be true to who you are. Figure out the ways to make yourself comfortable, and access the best parts of you to feel good about what you're doing, and hopefully success will come as a result of that.
Very good advice. I think that's a wonderful place to end the podcast. But before we go, how can people follow you, keep up to date with you, and all of that cool stuff?
Oh, well, I have a website, GaryGoldsteinLA.com, www.GaryGoldsteinLA.com. Has way more than you'll ever need to know about me on there. And then I can be followed on Twitter and Instagram at Gary Goldstein LA. I'm on Facebook too. I have an author page on Facebook. And my books, they're available in through bookstores. Any bookstore can order any book basically for you, whether they carry it or not. And in all the Amazon and BarnesandNoble.com and anywhere online that you buy books, they're available. And if you do read my book or anybody's book, please write a review and leave it on Amazon and Goodreads.com, which is a very meaningful and very good website for readers. I learned a lot about in the marketing of books, how important reviews are. And listen, as a reviewer, I just say, be fair. What can I say? No, but no, really, it's really important to authors to get these ratings and reviews. Yeah, I hope you'll follow me. I hope you'll read my work. I hope you'll find my movies on, I'm on IMDb. Check out some of my movies. A lot of my TV movies, they're available on streaming and, for rental on Amazon and so on. And, hope you enjoyed them, and hope this has been helpful. I mean, I always love talking about writing and, talking to writers and helping writers. And, if I can help anybody avoid a pitfall that I fell into the hard way and can avoid it, I feel like, I've really succeeded, because, it's hard to, it's a hard career, and I think if there are people who can give you a little bit of guidance and help you. I've been helped, greatly by people who, just had just the right little thing to say that's made me feel better about it all. So hopefully we got some of that here today.
We definitely did, and it was awesome. And it helps me, it helps people that aren't just writers. There's a whole bunch of life advice soaked in
life
there.
advice.
Yeah, life advice, which is exactly what this podcast is about. And yeah, thank you so much. You're very insightful. I took a lot out of this. I know a lot of people will as well. And yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you, Michael. It was great. A great time. It was really fun. It's a great forum for talking about writing and all of that. Good question, really good questions. And, you have a great, easy manner about you, very supportive, and that's really nice.
I love the example that Gary gave when he injured himself and he lost the ability to type with both hands. He could have laid down in bed and wallowed in self-pity, but he knew that life must go on. So he decided to force himself to type with one finger at a time. Gary emphasizes how you're always better off writing something than not writing something. You don't always have to finish something, but if you don't put something down on the page, you got nothing. This doesn't just apply to writing, but also when we are pursuing a goal. As Martin Luther King Jr. says, you don't have to see the whole staircase, just take the first step. Thank you for listening to the Funny and Failure podcast, exploring the deeper side of comedy.